In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns with power and great glory, in coming days, Savior returns with power and great glory.
Travis went good, so last night's video, I read over the half of the pile of videos for you that I have not yet gotten to, and wasn't sure if I would because of Friday. We're going to wait to see what happens on Friday. And so after that video, I then went on to get 7 more revelations for videos for you. And one of which was while I was out running. And I came back and did some checking. And no, not really. He still sucks at Revelation 2. Sucks at translation, sucks at being a prophet, sucks at being a seer, sucks at being a revelator. Amos 3:7. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, save he shall revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets. That is a mistranslation from the original text, and even the Jews get it wrong in their biblical Hebrew text. But regardless, our Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint manuals and the teachings behind it still get it right. And that's that we're not going to be presented with any kind of danger as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because we have the president of the church who is supposed to warn us. And they even have it set up so that there's conferences where members of the church can be warned in advance of something that's coming. And with the internet, you have the opportunity for Nelson to step up and finally do something to show that he is, and he fails, but nonetheless, there's still that opportunity for him to warn Mormons. And because he's such an utter failure as the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons then take it upon themselves to create their own fantasy world about the latter days. And so you get your Brian David Mitchells, your Chad Daybell with Lori Vallow, and the new guy that is all over YouTube, and critics are doing videos on him, as he's calling for the end of the world because of Mormons' wickedness. And so, if you're unfamiliar with me, yes, I'm warning you in advance too. And so there's a dichotomous difference, night and day difference, between Nelson's approach and my approach. And this was purposely designed by me to help you illustrate the differences. And Mormon still chose nothing rather than Amos 3:7. Because Amos 3:7 is talking about the prophecies in the learning of the Jews in regards to their law, which is the book of Deuteronomy, even though it's translated as the repetition of the law. And so in chapter 18, verses 15 through 19, the Jewish author of the law, who is writing it as if he's Moses, and you can see many instances in there where he says, still is unto this day, and that's a tip-off that it's not Moses. That it is a Jewish author. And then when you do linguistic research on the text, you realize that this was written during the Roman period time, because there are certain events that began during the Romans. There are certain events that began during the Greeks. There are certain events that occurred during Babylonian captivity, and Persians and Egyptians, and so you would do your research knowing of each of these cultures and when they came into existence and when they were conquered by the next civilization, and know what was unique about each one, so that when you go to a biblical text claiming to be from 2000 or 1500 whatever BCE, and it, people even claim that Adam and Eve were 4000 approximately, you need to know who made those claims. And then when you compare it with the scientific facts that is known, you can then confirm or deny and place the biblical text in the correct time frame of when it was written. And thus, Deuteronomy, the law, was written during the Roman period of time. And I'd have to do a whole video on that to go over Deuteronomy with you from the Hebrew text to explain how it ties into the Roman period. Which I would have touched on if I did my temple sex video that I talked about. Was one of the videos. Because there's differences of temple sex in the different cultures as time goes by. And so thus, Genesis has talk about temple sex. And even the book of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, has talk about temple sex. And I would have explained how we know it's also the Roman period rather than the Greek period, and not the Babylonian or the Egyptian. But I'm not doing that video. We're doing Amos 37, comparing and contrasting Nelson and I. And so Nelson, on the 10th of November, which was a Friday, and I previously told you about Islam and Fridays, and this coming Friday, the 24th. And that's what I wanted to check, is to see if he actually did this on the 17th. No, it was long ago, on the 10th. But I still remember doing the video about it, because you see him at his desk, at his office, despite him being crippled. And crippled. No mental crippled to add to the list. Anyway, and he's got his scriptures open, and he's writing a document out, or pretending to write a document out, which is already written, and he's still got his pen out as if he's writing it in real time. He's posing. He's a poser. And so when he says in his message, the Lord is truly hastening his work, he is signaling to you by not signaling to you that you're supposed to search the scriptures for that, to know what he's talking about, with the missionaries and the 36 new missions with the 72,000 missionaries for next year. And so this morning while I was running, I'm still associative memory. I remember the Palm Sunday picture in the background. Jesus riding triumphantly, which any Christian should already catch on. It can't be literal history. He rides in triumphant, everybody's cheering, and by the end of the week, he's murdered by them. And he fails to save them from the Romans. You should have caught on, but nope. Oh, dear God. But I was curious because Palm Sunday is the Christian revision of the Jewish learning of the author of the Gospels, who's trying to tell you that this is Passover from the Exodus, because Jesus is not Jesus of the Roman period time. He's the man like Moses, because it was written during the Roman period time, and the authors of the Gospels were written during the Roman period time. So they're all referring to the same book, traditions, prophecies, and they're all writing different story prophecies of the latter days. But nope, Constantine comes along and says, nope, they're now literal history. And archaeology can't find it. None of it is real. And so Christians demand that the school systems change to teach Roman history about Jesus and about creation. It was 4000 BC. And it's before Christ, not BCE. Before the Common Era. And so, yeah, dear God, even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is tampered with this as well, because they too believe the Book of Mormon to be literal history, so they want American history changed to conform and comply to the Book of Mormon as literal history, when it's not. It's the learning of the Jews too. And I had some dumbass comment by a Christian yesterday who says that I should study the Bible because it would prove that the Book of Mormon is a fraud. He's never read his Book of Mormon. It plagiarizes the Bible, proving they're true. It's literal history. Oh, dear God. Just the ignorance of people that leads to hate. And that hate leads to violence. And that's what this is all about. This is the Exodus. Passion Week is about the Exodus. Nelson knows that. He can't tell you that because he claims he's the voice of Jesus. That this is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If he comes out and says, we've been lying to you all this time, Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon are in the learning of the Jews, and we're anti-Semitic, so where do we go from here? I mean, yeah, as the president of the church, he can say, we're going back to the learning of the Jews, guys. Book of Mormon is now in the learning of the Jews. We're trying to find somebody who's smart enough to know how to redo the manuals and the commentaries. And we're having trouble. We don't dare ask Travis because we're ashamed and humiliated. No, they can't do that, can they? They have to maintain the lie. And so in order to maintain the lie, they have to add upon lie, upon lie, upon lie, upon lie, upon lie, until it gets so absurd that Mormons behave exactly like a cult group to those who aren't Mormon. As I get those comments, Mormonism is a cult. And Mormons have heard it, and they deny. No, we're not. We're Christian. We're just not Trinitarian Christian, and Christians are mean to us for being non-Trinitarian. And so, what is the scripture? Because that's what I was wondering, as if 7 days would be the 24th. And instead it was the 17th. But it was on a Friday. And it's 2 weeks instead of 1. He does say 2 months he's been a cripple. And I went over the scriptures with you, and the majority of the scriptures say you're not supposed to hasten your work. And so he's obviously referring to the one and only passage, section 88 of the Doctrine and Covenants. And where he says, it's Joseph speaking as Jesus, I will hasten my work in its time. And as I kept going over for you, he talks about, and I give unto you who are the first laborers in this last kingdom. And so with Nelson, he's talking about the last laborers in the last kingdom. It's about to be Judgment Day, the day that shall burn as an oven, when Jesus comes and saves everybody who's Mormon, and faithful Mormon, and tithe-paying Mormon, not apostate Mormons, or the rest of the world. This is what he's referring to. This is in the mind of Nelson. He has to present this to you, that Jesus is going to do it. He cannot reveal the truth that he, as the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is getting inspired by voices he claims to be by Jesus to murder people, to pay the Judas price to others to murder people, to bring to pass Jesus' will. He can't tell you that, because that's a crime. He would get locked up in prison for it. Right, Warren Jeffs? And Chad Daybell, and Brian David Mitchell, and so he goes on here and says, I give unto you a commandment that you shall continue in prayer and fasting from this time forth. So Nelson thanks everybody for their thoughts and prayers. And Mormons respond, oh, you're the greatest, I love you. And women rip off their bras and throw it at them, like they did with Elvis. I'm still creeped out about that. My mom loved Elvis. She had all of his records until he became a druggie, and then all of a sudden he doesn't exist. She doesn't acknowledge the Elvis during his druggie years. Mother. And so like me, she doesn't acknowledge me once I hit puberty. Seriously, dear God. Put a belt on, you're naked. Mom. Seriously. I didn't have a belt. Jeans. A shirt, most likely one she made for me. And I'm naked because I didn't have a belt. My jeans were floods. I grew too fast. She constantly had to buy new clothes for me. And they all got handed down to my brother. didn't always get new clothes because they were all going to me. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I saw my brother with floods on a number of occasions. But you have to keep on reading. In verse 81, testify and warn the people. Amos 3:7. And it becometh every man who hath been warned to warn his neighbor. Therefore they are left without excuse. That's why I do my videos, Mormons, so that you are left without excuse. But you send me a hate comment and a death threat, and so I have to ban you, and you've made your choice. You have been left without excuse. You could have been good. You weren't. You chose to be bad. You're gone. You've been judged. You judged you. Not me. You. You. Nope, you. And so, down in 85, here it is. That their souls may escape the wrath of God, the desolation of abomination which awaits the wicked. The whole theme of the Book of Mormon, right there in verse 85 of section 88 of the Doctrine and Covenants. To sum up the Book of Mormon in one sentence, that people who read the Book of Mormon may escape the wrath of God, the desolation of abomination which awaits the wicked. But nope, Nelson's telling you that the Book of Mormon is the restoration of the gospel. Jesus! They put in the 1981 edition of the Book of Mormon, right before, as part of the introductory preface stuff, the Joseph Smith history account. Except for that part. The day that shall burn as an oven, and they that come shall burn them. This is what I have been doing my videos to warn and testify to you who would listen, so that you may escape the wrath of God, the desolation of abomination which awaits the wicked. And it's right there in the Joseph Smith history for you that I've been going over with you all this year, because this is the bicentennial year. And instead of talking about the bicentennial year, they instead said it's the restoration of the gospel. That's the whole point of the Book of Mormon. Emmanuel, the sun god at noonday, the Jewish Christ, comes to Joseph Smith on the Jewish day of the 22nd of September, 1823. Because the Jews begin their day at 6 p.m. That's why Friday, being 9/11, I'm curious. There's other things that tie to it, to confirm, yeah, there's something for this day. Somebody's coming. Oh. Dogs and cats, mass hysteria. That help you? And so, do you see the difference between Nelson and I? I've been going over the scriptures as prophecies in the learning of the Jews to testify and warn Mormons. Nelson is playing a game with you. He throws out little clues, but doesn't tell you specifically and directly. And so Mormons have to create the clues. And so, for the October 2019 General Conference, Nelson told us that it's the bicentennial of the first vision, and that they've got things planned all year long. And so it'll be a memorable event. And so then, boom, coronavirus. Shuts down the church. Shuts down conference. And Nelson gets up and says, I told you it would be memorable. And all Mormons all over YouTube, Nelson prophesied of coronavirus. No, he didn't. He worked with Russia, or China in this particular case. Back in January, he came out and confessed. Church News. He called China. He knew how serious it was and didn't warn us. Didn't do anything to protect you. Threatened Governor Herbert at the pulpit of conference to reopen so that missionary work can commence again, to bring in new recruits to pay tithing to the church. And missionaries died. Mormons died. But oh, he prophesied, didn't he? There's a big difference between those who make prophecies happen and deceive the people into thinking it's Jesus versus those who actually are fulfilling Amos 3:7. And Mormons got fooled. You were warned not to be fooled. But you didn't listen. Because section 28 and section 34 tells you only to listen to Joseph Smith. In 28, no one shall be appointed to receive commandments and revelations in this church excepting my servant Joseph Smith Jr. He's the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. No. Liar. The Church of the Latter-day Saints. That was a trick. I was trying to see if he caught it. For he receiveth them even as Moses. Oh, the Jewish Christ. Joseph Smith's the Jewish Christ, is he? Sure enough. Section 107, verse 91. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. Joseph Smith is the Christ. Joseph Smith is the Jewish Christ. The man like Moses. He only is to be listened to. No one else. No one else is a seer, revelator, translator, and a prophet. Except Hiram, who was everything but translator. He was a patriarch. It's right here in Scripture. Unfortunately, I had a viewer who told me that he told his wife about Hiram Smith being the patriarch, and she didn't believe him. And now their marriage is in jeopardy because she did not know about the church patriarch. Elder G. Smith. and the controversy behind Elder G. Smith. When Kimball secretly put him on emeritus status, I was 9 years old. I had just been shocked that apparently there's these people called blacks, and they weren't allowed in our temples to receive the priesthood. Obviously, I know it's a joke. Because even in the white supremacist neighborhoods that my parents purposely had me move to, we still had the token blacks whose fathers were struggling to try to get out of the bondage in America. And so, yeah, Stan Lowry, I still cry over of what the Auburn jail did to him, and his father coming up to me and begging me to have my parents not sue him. I mean, there he is, making it into a suburban home, and his son is constantly getting in trouble at school. I was the office aide. His file was thick. And the school purposely had me file his latest thing that I begged them it was an accident. We were in the PE class, and we were playing touch football, and some of the guys joked about playing tackle, and so I got the ball, ran into the end zone, and Stan touched me on the shoulder. Touched. Didn't tackle. Touched. But by touching me, that caused my right foot to step weird and fractured. Not broken. Fractured. The inside of the one bone, and so everybody narked on Stan, saying, "Well, he decided to tackle Travis." And no, the teacher didn't see it and sent him to the principal's office, and he got expelled from school. And so that's why it crushed me when his father saw me as I was coming home in crutches with the cast. I begged the secretary, because she was Mormon. She went to Corona for church rather than, or in a different ward in the Corona building. But I begged her, and she says, "We'll take care of this." A Mormon. And so, yeah, I've seen the racism of Mormons after the supposed we're no longer racist event. But with that sidetrack that I'm leaking, oh, dear God. So yes, Mormons are that way to the Jews as well. And even worse than the way they are to blacks. Because the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith are in the learning of the Jews, and they call them Christian. And so, where were we? Yeah, Nelson claims to be this guy. But there's some problems. One, the succession is in verse 22. Brigham Young did not follow that, because there's supposed to be 3 presidents to replace Joseph, not 1 and 2 counselors. And it was supposed to be by a full Melchizedek priesthood vote. As I did the video the other day, they have to have the works. Faith without works is M. Russell Ballard. They have to exhibit the works of being a seer, revelator, translator, and prophet, so that the Melchizedek priesthood holders, would know these works, know him by his fruit, to vote for him. And 3 people, which means the church are supposed to be teaching Mormons how to be seers, revelators, translators, and prophets. We're supposed to have a corrected translation of the Bible. We're supposed to have finished the translation of the papyrus scrolls and other Egyptian documents, translated and added to our scriptures, because they're all prophecies about the latter day man like Moses for us. I was debating as to whether or not to watch a certain movie that I can't watch because I don't have ice cream. It's the Daniel Craig James Bond series. I can get through all his other ones just fine, but when I get to his final one, even though it has the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as Spectre, who's the Book of Mormon? Everybody in the world knows you're the evil enemy, guys. But yeah, once I see her in the beginning of the show, having watched it now, I can't watch it anymore. I know what happens. Oh, dear God. But I don't know. It's a toss-up. What do I watch for Thanksgiving? I mean, I could do Terminator. We'll see. And so, yeah, Brigham Young was not a seer, revelator, translator, and prophet, as he's turned all of his 12 into prophets, seers, and revelators. We all know this, right? You do know that Cook, who just came out, claiming to answer the young adults' questions about revelation as a revelator, and then he says, have a shared feeling. He doesn't have the gift of revelator. He was a fraud, just like Brad Wilcox is inappropriately talking to youth about sexuality. And boom, church news last night, he's at it again. Church is back to trying to condemn porn, because that's Lucifer's plan of happiness. It's in the temple. You never go to the temple? You don't know? I recommend you watch New Name Noah. He has the video. I do the clips. And so, yes, the Book of Mormon, likewise, is a third witness to this, thanks to Joseph Smith Sr., who had to rewrite it. 2 Nephi, chapter 3, verse 5, talks about both of them. Wherefore Joseph truly saw our day, and he obtained a promise of the Lord that out of the fruit of his loins the Lord God would raise up. There's the Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. And it should be footnoted here, and it's not. Oops. Bruce R. McConkie, you failed us. You did a whole Messiah series, and you failed us. I will know no better than that I know now that I'm going to go burn in hell for lying to you about Jesus. Raise up a righteous branch unto the house of Israel. That's Joseph Smith. And he has to clarify that. But not the Messiah. Who also would be raised up unto the house of Israel. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. It should have been put here. It wasn't. I'm looking at the footnotes. It's not. Got a bunch of Genesises, and there's a Psalm, and there's a 1 Nephi 5, and then there's an Amos 5:15. No Deuteronomy. No law of the Jews, because this is in the learning of the Jews, which means they refer to the law to write their stories of prophecy for the latter days. But then he goes on to talk about the Messiah that is separate from Joseph Smith. To be remembered in the covenants of the Lord. This is after Joseph Smith has come. That the Messiah, after Joseph Smith has come, should be made manifest, raised up, unto them. Who's them now? The church that Joseph Smith founded. Mormons. In the latter days. That's your Christ for the latter days, Mormons. Right there in the Book of Mormon, the keystone of Mormonism, in the learning of the Jews. And so as I've been going with you over all these years, section 103, talking about the redemption of Zion, and verse 16, therefore I will raise up. Where's Deuteronomy? Doesn't have it. Bruce R. McConkie, why don't you have Deuteronomy here? This is it. This is our Christ. I will raise up unto the Mormons a man who shall lead them like as Moses, the Jewish Christ. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. The Exodus is the pattern symbolism of events for the latter days. The 8 years, not the 8 days. A day unto the Lord is 1 year. And there's Mormons. So we know which branch off from Joseph Smith it is. That it's not Joseph Smith III, it's not Sidney Rigdon, it's nobody else. It's Brigham Young. For ye are the children of Israel and the seed of Abraham, and ye must needs be led out of bondage in the latter days, by power and with a stretched out arm. And so as you listen to Nelson in the conferences, you hear him. Have you put yourselves in bondage? Not just saying the name Jesus and quoting the Danite forged document of section 115. In the latter days, it shall be called the Church of Jesus Christ, the abominable Christ of verse 19 in the Joseph Smith history. And so Mormons have refused to know who to look for. They're waiting for Jesus. And so when fanatics follow Nelson, that's what they're thinking of. And if Jesus didn't come on Friday the 17th, which he didn't, Nelson has an out. I never said that. What made you think that? Oh, the picture in the back and quoting scripture that talks about the day that shall burn as an oven, and my conference talks that says in the coming days Jesus is coming. See, that's what Nelson is doing. He's playing it safe. He's already paid the Judas price. He knows the events that are going to happen to you. And he's blaming Jesus for it. But he has to make it happen because Jesus isn't real. He's letting you believe that Jesus is speaking to him and telling him to hurt people, to betray people, to cause harm to people. Because that's the reality. Nelson is a very sick and disturbed man. And yet Mormons all thank thee, O God, for a prophet. It was about Joseph, not Nelson. Nelson is not legitimate. If Brigham Young's not legitimate, Nelson's not legitimate. And so you have to go back to the Torah. The author of Numbers, chapter 12, verse 6. That's where Joseph Smith got his authority. Thus the Joseph Smith history. Visions. Joseph Smith was telling you in that 1838 version that's his authority as the Jewish Christ, a man like Moses, and likewise for your Christ in the latter days, Jewish Christ. Big difference. Mormons refuse. And so, who's been actually warning you in advance before the danger happened? And who listened and who got cut off? And this is where we end for this video. Joseph Smith history. I've been going with you all year long. And even back before the October conference of last year, he quoted also the 3rd chapter of Acts, 22nd and 23rd verses, precisely as they stand in our New Testament. Has anybody still not done this? Or are you trusting that the quote is precisely as it stands in our New Testament? Did you not check it? I'm going to leave you to check it because it talks about Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. Oh, Bruce put it in the footnotes for this time. There it is. He said that that man like Moses was Christ. I just read to you the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith and person of the latter days in the great and abominable church will be your Christ. That's who they're talking about. It's not Jesus. Willard Richards added in Jesus Christ to the name of the church in this history account. It was the Church of Latter-day Saints. It was never the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, yes, you see Jesus, but it's in the learning of the Jews, not Christians. A big difference. He's not literal history. That's a Christian interpretation. So Nelson is lying to you, claiming Jesus is real, literal history. That should automatically tell all Mormons he's a fraud and a false prophet. And no wonder he can't translate worth a lick. Let God prevail in your life. That's Israel. I had that written down somewhere. Where did I have that? Are you kidding me? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, the ye elders of Israel. Because both Jews and Mormons are considered Israel in prophecy. Joseph Smith continues that. Section 45, for example. He's talking to Mormons about Mormons, but using Jews. And you see the latter days here, Christians and Islam have screwed up the interpretation of the Jewish Bible. And they, because they screwed up the interpretation, have to self-fulfill their self-fulfilling interpretation of the Bible. And so it's not Jesus who's doing anything. They're getting revelation from Jesus to hurt people, to murder people, to cause harm to people, just like Nelson is. Because Jesus is not real. They all have to make it happen. They are not prophets. Because there's a big difference between a real prophet and someone who makes things happen. I referred to the FBI in Final Destination, who's interrogating the boy who had the prophecy of the plane exploding. Awesome series. Maybe I should watch that one. No tears in that one. Just some cringing moments with the types of murders that occur by death. And so, yes, there is a dualism going on, as this war against Israel is not the Jewish prophecy. It's the Christian and Islamic prophecy, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints' prophecy. They have to cause this. That's why Joseph Smith put in the Joseph Smith history, they that come shall burn you. Because it's not God. God's warning of this. That man, because of their evil, have to cause this. And they blame Jesus for it. Did you know that the key of government is Lucifer? See, the key of Elijah, the key of Moses, section 110. And then other keys, Peter, James, and John, John the Baptist, all those keys? Yeah. Well, Lucifer has the keys of government, and he gave it to Jesus Christ. At Adam on Diamond. Oh my God. And I had some about that in there as well for you. Well, this was intending to be a short video and it ended up being long, so now I can bathe and shave. Yay. I mean, yeah, I could also watch Expendables, because I'm getting number 4 today. Mormons are supposed to look for a Mormon who demonstrates the gifts of prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. Not of French and Spanish and German. No. Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. That's why they mention it right at the beginning of the Book of Mormon. So that Mormons would not be deceived. So that Mormons would know that they've been warned. Because he will warn you directly. Not hide it and mask it. That if he's right, he takes all the credit for it. If he's wrong, he goes, I never said that.